Simplifying a buyer representation agreement so we can understand it and explain it. Coming up. Hey, what's up guys? Callum Moore here. In this channel I share information that we need to achieve real estate success. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing. At any point during the video, check out the description below. I list links to what we discuss, all my recommendations, and how to contact me down there. Let's get into the video. Okay, it's a fact. A high percentage of buyers that are presented with documents to sign prior to even coming to a decision on a home can be very hesitant and even scare them away. They think to themselves, does this mean I have to buy a home even if I don't like it? Or am I paying you for your time and will I have to pay you even if I don't buy? A lot of things, rightfully so, go through people's heads before they sign contracts. I will leave it up to you to decide how you want to explain this delicate situation to your buyer clients. But if I had to just keep it simple, I would say we now have a fiduciary responsibility to you as our buyer clients, and it is governed by our code of ethics and the Real Estate and Business Brokers Act. You could even mention that these forms are put together by the Ontario Real Estate Association. They are designed to be balanced, not written up or skewed by the brokerage's lawyer or anything like that. But yes, I like to keep this conversation professional but polite, and you can probably gauge your buyers. People can't by any means be forced to sign a buyer representation agreement. Our duty is to sign it, date it, present it for signature. They can refuse, and then you as the registrant can actually decide if you would like to continue or not. Okay, on to the contract. The top part here is very standard. This is an exclusive buyer representation agreement between the brokerage and the buyer. Notice that it is the brokerage going here, not us, but we of course represent the brokerage. Here is the commencing and expiry dates. 90 days would be normal. Anything over 6 months, which would be rare, would require the buyer's initials here. They do not initial here normally and would be wrong to do so on an agreement less than 6 months. It continues to the type of property. For the purpose of locating a real property meeting the following general description. Note that this is just a general description. It doesn't have to be something like a 3-bed, 2-bath, X square footage with a garage type thing. Just indicating any residential property will do fine here. Below is geographic location. This indicates the area agreed upon by both the buyer and the real estate brokerage for which the agreement is valid. It is usually the area in which the buyer wishes to purchase the property. So a buyer can be looking for a home in one area and say a cottage in a completely different area and have signed 2 BRAs. What could be written here would be something like all areas within a 50-kilometer radius of, for example, say Kitchener, Ontario. Or even if the buyer has expressed the 5 cities or towns that they are interested in, you could also list them all here. And perfectly written at the bottom of the page, and most likely what we have already asked our buyers. The buyer hereby warrants that the buyer is not a party to a buyer representation agreement with any registered real estate brokerage for the purchase or lease of a real property of the general description indicated above. Okay, let's move on to the numbered pre-printed clauses. 1. Definitions and interpretations. Quick one here. This just defines who will be referred to who for the remainder of this document. Number 2, commissions. This definitely can be scary to look at for the buyers and one of the bigger clauses on the agreement. They will think to themselves, buyers don't pay commissions to buy, sellers pay commissions to sell. But as we scroll down, and let's say we indicate 2% here. This means that if the listing brokerage is offering a commission of 2% or higher, the buyers will pay nothing, which will be a very high percentage at the time. But if, for example, the buyer finds a home for sale by owner, and that owner is not paying real estate agents any commissions at all for bringing potential buyers, they only want to work with the lawyers, then in that rare case, the buyer would be requested to pay the 2% commission for the real estate agent and the brokerage doing their job. Anytime that this may happen, that very low percentage of time, it is our duty and obligation to inform the buyer prior to viewing any property and any offers that could be made. This buyer representation agreement is also a lease agreement. If it's a lease, it's usually a half month's rent, and you'd put that here as well. As we scroll down in this clause, we get to the holdover period. The buyer agrees to pay the brokerage such commission if the buyer enters into an agreement within, and we will indicate, for example, 90 days here. 90 days after the expiration of this agreement, the holdover period. This is only valid on a property that the real estate agent has actually shown the buyer between the commencement and expiration date of this agreement. So for example, if the contract expires and the buyers say, okay, we're just going to go out and look on our own now, or we've decided that we're actually just going to stay put where we are. We say, okay, completely understand, but now the holdover period of 90 days starts. So if the buyers go back out and buy a property that we have shown them, let's say 30 days ago, we are still compensated for the work we have done. If they buy a property just listed, all good, doesn't matter, we're just protected for the work that we've already done. It also goes on to say, and I'll mention this for my viewers that are doing the real estate course right now, because there seems to be way too many questions on this. However, that if the buyer enters into a new buyer representation agreement with another registered real estate brokerage after the expiration date of this agreement, the buyer's liability to pay commission to the brokerage shall be reduced by the amount paid to the other brokerage under the new agreement. So the buyer would pay the difference if the commission was less. Example, same situation, we have shown our previous buyer clients a home and our agreed commission was that same 2%. The contract ends, they sign a new buyer representation agreement with a brokerage, they end up buying a home that we have shown them during the holdover period, the buyer will pay us the difference. If it's the same or more, we get nothing. But for our example, if they are only paying 1%, they would pay the new brokerage 1%, and we would get the difference of the remaining 1%. Again, very rare, barely worth talking about, but it seems to come up on the exams quite a lot. On to number 3, representation. This is the other bigger clause and confirms that the salesperson has explained the different types of agency relationships that may occur in a real estate transaction. Representation means they could be a client, they could be a customer, and we also could be in multiple representation. A very high percentage of the time, this is a buyer representation agreement, they will be a client. Multiple representation would occur when the buyer and seller are clients of the same brokerage, which is sometimes also referred to as dual agency. The buyer will be notified and have to give written consent to the brokerage that they understand this conflict of interest. This is done prior to submitting an offer and is documented in a form called the Confirmation of Cooperation and Representation. We are still very much there for our buyer clients. We are still doing all of the work, presenting all of the information needed to make an educated decision, but we can't disclose the wants or needs of the clients involved in the transaction. And again, in these more rare situations, we will discuss this again with our buyer clients, and we cannot proceed until another document is reviewed and signed. 4. Referral of properties. This states that the buyer must inform us if they become aware of a property of interest to them. If they find a property on realtor.ca or they happen to drive by a for sale by owner sign, they must inform us. We are working for the length of this contract to find our buyers a home together. If the buyer were to subsequently purchase on their own, the set commission would still be owed to the salesperson. Number 5, indemnification. Number 5, indemnification. Number 5, indemnification. Us as salespeople cannot be held liable for the physical condition of the property. This is where the use of third parties, for example, a home inspector, would be referred to. It is the responsibility of the buyer to educate themselves on the condition of the property. Of course, we help, answer all questions that we can, offer our resources, but ultimately our job is the real estate transaction itself, not the physical condition of the property. 6, finder's fee. Bit of an older clause, not used that much anymore from my knowledge. This provides consent for the salesperson to accept any finder's fee that a mortgage broker, for example, may offer them for their referral. 7, consumer reports. This states that the buyer understands that credit checks and personal information about them may be used in the process of them purchasing a property. Because this contract covers leases, that's more for what this clause is for. Purchasing a home, the buyer's bank or lender will be doing their credit checks. But in a lease, a landlord, or lessor for the exam students out there, will be doing them as well to make sure the leasee can afford rent, that type of thing. Number 8, use and distribution of information. The buyer's privacy and information is definitely something taken seriously. But this means that we can use the buyer's personal information only to assist in making the transaction happen. It also assures the buyer that this information under the Privacy Act will not be distributed to third parties, like say for example, a cleaner or a moving company. The buyer's personal information is very protected. If, for example, we are discussing this transaction with, say, another real estate agent, we are referring to them as our buyers or our clients, not personal names. Very protected, guarded personal information. That's a huge one to me, that trust factor. 9, conflict or discrepancy. Very simple one here. If there are other schedules, additional information added to this agreement, the information on the attachment supersedes the clauses on this form. Number 10, successors and assigns. The heirs, executors, administrators, successors, and assigns of the undersigned are bound by the terms of this agreement. Number 11, electronic communications, and we'll put 12 in here as well, electronic signatures. This agreement, if necessary, may be sent via electronic means and still be binding on all parties. Emails, texts, sent and received, this will all be deemed part of the transaction, and there can be the use of electronic signatures in the year 2021. But of course, if the buyers do not want to use electronic signatures, they don't have to. We will come to them. 13, schedule. Straightforward. If a specific form or document has been added to this agreement, it should be indicated here. And at the bottom, a bit of an underlining summary or goal of this agreement between the brokerage and the buyer. The brokerage agrees to represent the buyer in locating a real property of the general description indicated above in an endeavor to obtain the acceptance of an agreement to purchase or lease a property on terms satisfactory to the buyer. Simply, the brokerage and us representing the buyer will assist in locating a property with a general description as indicated above and work to obtain the acceptance of an offer for the buyer. Right here is where we print our name, date, and sign to bind the brokerage. You could explain to your buyers that if for some reason we can't continue with the transaction, let's say there's an emergency in our life as the real estate agent, the brokerage will find a replacement to carry out the process. Below is where the buyer or buyers will sign and date and provide their phone numbers. Their phone numbers is for if something were to happen and the brokerage would need to get a hold of them. And the declaration of insurance is signed by us, stating that we carry insurance as required by the Real Estate and Business Brokers Act, REBA, or soon to be TRESA. We are insured for errors and omissions. We pay this annually. We pay this to cover us and basically the buyers as well. If we were to make an error on the contract that cost our buyers money, the buyers can take us to court and get that money lost, as I'm pretty sure we are covered up to $1 million. It would go through REBA, and it is what we pay insurance for. These insurances are good reasons for buyers to use realtors and something they won't find in private sales. So it's nice to be protected, but of course, our due diligence and attention to detail, doing our job, will hopefully prevent this. So that's it. The buyer signs and dates the acknowledgement at the bottom, and that's the Form 300 Buyer Representation Agreement here in Ontario. I really hope that helped, and if you're in real estate like myself to help future clients like no one else, reach out and comment below. And down the line, when it's time to start thinking about which brokerage to start your career with, don't hesitate to contact me. You can book a call with me. It's in the description below. DM, email, comment on this video. I get back to everyone. If that's for you, I'll talk to you soon. If not, check out this video right here where I explain and simplify the agreement of purchase and sale. We'll see you there.